Jackie is
plans.
definitely, it's got options, So in summer,
Yeah, but the 11 fish consisted of 2 carp and 9 barbel. I said, no, I'm sure it's just that there's muddies in front of them and it's not the maggots. So, yeah, I'd said about 1 o'clock I went to Leah. I said, just give me a couple. I just want to see if what's going to happen if I put it on.
Welcome to another episode of the Original Podcast with me, your host, Saki van der Kerk.
Alright, welcome back to another episode of the Original Podcast. We've got a nice English episode for you guys today. So for all the English listeners that always complain and say, Saki, English, please. Your wishes is being answered tonight. But before we go on, Dad, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks, Saki. Yeah, let's take it on and see what Mr. Lloyd is going to teach us tonight or tell us tonight, or his secrets and everything that he hides from us always. So let's take him on. It's the first time that I'm going to visit with him, have a chat. Last time you and Dwayne treated him softly. So let me put him on the spot a little bit.
No, so like my dad said, last time we did an episode with Lloyd was when my dad was on his way to Vietnam. He was on the plane. So Dwayne stood in for my dad for that episode. So it was Dwayne, myself, and Lloyd. But today Dad is here. And now it's actually quite funny because in the next, 3 weeks, I'm flying to South Africa. So it's also like, it seems like every time Lloyd comes onto the podcast, we meet each other quite soon after that. But Lloyd, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks, Saki. Thanks, Barry. Lucky to be back. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Okay, for those, before we go on to the whole podcast, there's just 1 or 2 administrative things that I just quickly want to touch. I just quickly want to mention the elephant in the room, my beautiful new light. I hope you guys enjoy it. I'm still busy doing the whole background thing. I'm renting an apartment here, so I can't make holes in the wall and stuff like that. So I have to use like planks and stuff like that. So that the whole wall needs to be like a false wall. So as time goes by, I'll just like slowly build onto it. But I have to say I'm quite chuffed with how it turned out. The second thing I just quickly want to mention is about the competition for the Petit Janine. We did not forget about that. I will make a separate video with a draw for that, and I'm going to post that purely on Facebook. That's not going to be on YouTube. The whole idea of the competition was to get you guys onto the Facebook page for the Original Podcast. So you can go and watch there. I think probably around Friday I will quickly put a video for you there to announce the winner for all the listeners as well as the members. For the members, I will contact them individually because I have their details. All right, yeah. So I think that's it for now. Lloyd, we were talking about this earlier. Usually we do a little bit of a weekend wrap up, but you haven't fished for a while, eh? You say you are a little bit still tired and your arms are still a bit sore from all those bloemhof fish that you caught.
Yeah, no, that's the truth. We fished the essays, and then following that was the minis. So the essays was actually really good. We were fishing at Bamboesspruit. So the president's, we were at Bamboes, and the premier was at the Sloop. So we were fortunate, I think. I mean, we fished the 5 days where you still caught a lot of fish, but not those extreme numbers, You could actually, the first day, probably second day as well, you could go for bigger fish and still compete. But by the third day of the essays, you had to target the numbers, So Dwayne and I we fished together on a peg, and that was really, really lekker because he's all about tempo, So I didn't need to wonder if the fish were there or not. I could just check him, bring the other rod closer, and then follow suit,
What was it like to fish with a younger peg mate instead of the old toppy?
Yeah, you're right, eh? Actually, it was lekker, Barry. It was really fun. No, it was an enjoyable essay and cheapest. I've never seen a guy fish with that much speed. And he fishes with mushrooms, eh? I was fishing with springs. And I mean, I say we weren't catching as many fish in the essays. We were still catching nonstop. It was like, I think Dwayne broke 100 on the one day, which I think you won the zone with that, definitely. But I mean, I was catching, I think I caught like 70 odd the one, I think it was the second day. And you don't stop. It's literally.
Did you only fish 4 hours or 8?
Yeah, we started late that day. No, it wasn't as crazy as the sloop, but I mean, it was. Yeah, I'll tell you one thing. The big difference was on this side at Bamboos, those fish forwards are a lot harder. Like those 1 kilo carps, they actually would like box you, you know. At the sloop, when we fish the minis, like those 1 kilo carps, you hook it and you can reel that thing in. They were a little bit more lethargic. I don't know if it was the concentration of fish. Maybe they were taking the oxygen level down there. I don't know what was going on, but the fish didn't fight really as hard. But still, so
I think it's maybe just excitement on your side. So you were pulling them a little bit harder because you see the guys next to you is on this tempo, and you realize, but you got to speed up. You got to, and then a person realized, but you can actually bring them in faster.
Yeah, no. Look, by the end of that second day of minis, jeepers, I was like, also, those fish are coming in so quick. You feel bad for them a bit, but it's just insane. But what I was saying at the essays, so Dwayne's got that mushroom, and he baits up that ball so quick. I mean, I'm fishing with springs because it's quicker. That act was like a wizard, eh? I don't know. He was never like trying to bait up. He was always ready to go, and also he reels those fish in quick as well. But no, it was nice to watch, and it was enjoyable. I mean, as a peg, we did well. As a team, we did well. Eden, I think we actually came second. So it was really a lekker essays. But yeah, to answer your question, I haven't fished since. It was such hard work.
And when you plan to start again?
So I'm actually going to Jozini this weekend. So I'm going to do some tiger fishing. So I'm doing other fishing, just not Papua. So yeah. And then the following
So how long are you going?
We go Thursday and we come back Sunday. It's like a small competition just amongst a big group of mates, where you hire the boats and everything. So it's lekker. It's lekker fishing.
You should have phoned me. You could have hired my boat. I'll skip you.
Yeah. Let's see.
You could have taken old Griekie, man.
Yeah, man. And then next weekend, I'm going to Dahlstrom to fish in a fly fishing competition. So that's going to be also. So it's fishing, but it's not our forte, you know?
Yeah.
It's a little bit something else.
So hopefully June I'll start fishing. I see there's a few elites actually at Jackie Leonard. So
yeah,
I might venture out.
Just tell me quickly, short, do you often do the fly fishing?
I do at least once a year. I'll fish in a float tube competition of some sort. So either Dahlstrom, there's a lekker one in the Camberg area. And then there used to be the Bells back in the day. So I used to always go do that. But generally I try to go at least once or twice a year, take the family as well, just for a getaway to Dahlstrom. And I like tying my own flies and all of that. So it's rewarding if you catch a fish on the fly.
That we were talking about getting Babbage on the podcast a few times now. I saw in the week he got a new workbench and stuff like that somebody made for him, and you can just see all the little compartments there. And I thought to myself, I can just imagine how many flies are going to be tied on that table.
Yeah.
Actually, I went with Terry on his bobble fishing excursion the one time. We went to Koppies Dam, and yes, that's a master.
That's definitely something that's on my bucket list to do, like to go out with him, regardless of what.
Yeah, so there, it's all about accuracy. You need to cast those flies on the same spot. But like I thought I was casting it on the same spot. He says, no, it's got to really the raindrop has to land on itself, basically. It's insane. But if you get it right, you catch those barbel, because they're that sensitive with their whiskers that they come exactly to where that bloop is. And if you go just next to it, he misses the fly. So then he's like going in circles, sort of, and then they just leave the spot. So if the water's murky, if it's clearer, you can be a little bit less accurate. But there's a lekker day out with them. A lot of walking as well.
Have you ever fished for trout there in the Midlands? Natal Midlands?
Yeah, I've done that. Underberg.
There's a guy here, or a company, Vietnam Fly Fishing, that bought a pond just outside of District 7 now. Probably a year and a half ago. Where they're going to convert it into like a complete fly fishing venue, where they're busy building the clubhouse now. But I think they're actually finished with the clubhouse. But they've got barramundi and all of those things that they're going to stock in the pond there for fly fishing.
Yeah.
That's going to be something. And I've got my fly rod. There's my fly rod.
Is it going to be? Is it going to be you're going to use a fly with a P5?
No, I don't think I would need that. I think it's going to be fun if they open. I'll definitely go there for a session or two.
More than likely, that will be when I'm there.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's just down the road. It's about an hour away. Not even an hour away. It's like 45 minutes away, I think. So it's definitely more doable than Bull. So for the listeners, talking about that, last week Friday, I posted my first fishing video on YouTube. So if you haven't seen that one yet, we went fishing for those big Mekong catfish with the spring and the millifoor and everything like Papua. Everything is just bigger. I took 2 of my South African mates with us. So if you haven't seen that video yet, you can go check. I posted it last week, so it's on YouTube. You'll see Vietnam Papua fishing or something in that line. It was so many the lekker video that I made for you guys. I promised you 2 weeks ago that I would do it. I obviously still have a lot to learn. I know how to do the podcast videos now. We are now on episode 73, so I've done enough of these videos to know more or less what to do. But obviously a fishing video is a completely different game, so there's a lot of lessons to learn. But I've learned a few, and we'll continue doing that. I think the next trip that I'm going to go do that is barramundi there in the mangroves forests. One of my friends, South African friends, he went there last week. The biggest one that they caught was 4.5 kilos. So there's definitely a couple of barramundis to be caught.
4.5 kilos. How big do they get?
Groot.
Yeah.
More than a meter. So for them, with barramundi, if you can catch one that's a meter, that's like it's a special club. Like if you can catch one of a meter, that's where you. I don't know how much that weighs, but they usually just measure them. Maar hier het hulle nou geweeg, maar dit is 'n paar lekker vis. Daai 4.5 kilo barramundi is 'n dik vis. So we'll definitely go catch a few of them. But for now, we're planning on getting our stuff ready for South Africa. I'll probably have to wait for after this.
On our side, I can quickly say to the people that we are busy. I'm nervous. I said on the podcast last year that I will go and take part I'll try my best to make a team so that I can take part in the vergooi and koolgooi. And so we got our trials this weekend. Central Gauteng's got their trials for that this weekend. So we'll go and see if I can make it into the veterans team. I don't know. It's not a struggle, but I'm sure if I can just make the team, then at least I'll get another month that I can try to practice and see what we can work on.
Lloyd, are you going to be there at the vergooi essays?
It's this weekend, eh?
No, the essays is only the 21st of June.
Oh no! I don't. I've never done that, Saki. I've never gone for it.
But I think if you're not going to take part, I think you will still try and come and visit us the day.
Yeah. Where is it going to be, Barry?
At the I think it's at the Anker High School in Brakpan. So it's they're right next to you.
Yeah.
20 minutes
that'll be
drive.
lekker. Come watch it.
And then you'll
so
see
excited.
everybody there. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the day before I fly out. So I fly out back to Vietnam on the 22nd.
Oh, so you'll be there.
So I'm going to be there. My wife's going to be
Then
there.
I'll have to come.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's definitely
come
gonna be a
check
little-
on Barry in action.
Yeah.
Yeah, come and check out, make my name Popo. But in any case.
But at this point in time, my dad went casting yesterday, and it sounds like
Yeah,
it's-
but you
it's not too-
don't talk too much. Don't talk too much.
Yeah. Keep the rabbit in
It's
there.
not too bad. I think he underestimated the whole time. Like he was talking, he was like, "I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with that." But it sounds like it's a possibility that he can still make team.
And Barry only gooi that 63 gram egg, eh?
73.
70. Okay.
Yeah, 73 gram plastic ball
That's
with a lead
okay.
inside.
Ah,
Yeah.
right.
That's what you got to chuck 10-pound line. And I still say
14 foot.
myself and Lloyd had a discussion this afternoon.
Lloyd,
Yeah. Where he said he's also fishing with the 14-foot extreme casters. And he said the same, that now he can't use that. So I'll still see if I can convince him one day to
what's
just
the
open
point?
it up.
well, what's the point of limiting it to 13 foot? What's it? 13 foot 3 says.
No, 6, yeah. I can't believe that they don't say, listen, you're not allowed to use anything shorter than 6 foot or 8 foot or what. I mean, why the length and not the shortness or whatever? Why don't they come and say, rather say, listen, you're not allowed to use a leader thicker than this or that, because that can give you an advantage.
Yeah, braid leader.
Where I say a rod is a rod. If that's what you are using, then that's what you are using.
Are you? Lloyd said something now with the braid leader. Are you allowed to throw a braid leader? No.
No. Not at all.
But yeah, I agree on Barry. I think it should just be open. I mean, if you can cast a 16-foot rod, then
But the thing
Yeah,
is,
it's a
like,
talent.
it's
Not
not like
everyone
you
can
guys
do
use the 14-foot rods just for casting competition. You actually fish with it. Those are your fishing rods. Like if
Fishing
you go
rods,
to my
yeah.
dad's trailer, when he goes fishing today, you can see, you can take out the pipe and his 14 foot are there. That's fishing rod. It's not just
That and my
rods
10
for
foot.
casting. Yeah. So I can understand it, like they want to maybe say, okay, don't come here with custom rods that's just for casting, that's horrible for fishing. But I mean, my dad's 14 foot, that's literally his rods he fishes with. That's
But if you take those rods of Quagga, those Bliksem sticks of his, that's made for casting, but he's using it for a purpose, and that's if those barbel are there on the inside, that's what you need to do. So I don't know what their story is, but like they say, everybody that take part in a competition, you know before the time, you know the rules.
yeah, that's true.
And although you're not always happy with the rules, you've got to fit in.
Yeah, but just for the listeners back home, at home, the casting essays and stuff like that is open for the public, so everybody's more than welcome to join. The more
Yeah,
people
you can't take part, but come and visit.
Yeah, come have a look. I think there's going to be seating on the grandstand where you can see how they cast. You can walk around. I'm sure there will be.
And everybody's there for you to talk to have a chat to. All those big names, you'll find them. And everybody's always, and there you'll get something. I don't want to talk to you, but the others are normally very open for discussions and to show you what they're doing and how they're doing it and the whole story.
Maar het gaan seker weer lekker koud wees, so bring maar vir julle OBS saam. Ek gaan definitief.
No, you're not allowed any alcohol there. They're not allowed to have any alcohol there.
Okay. So drink OBS by die huis.
Yeah,
Koppie koffie.
bring a flask that's closed.
Well, but all right. But kom ons gaan. That's the essays. I think my dad's slowly getting used to the casting again. He was slacking for a little bit, but I think he's slowly getting back into the game. And yeah, so also now with the podcast now for the last couple of weeks, we've been attacking a specific venue, and then a venue that's been popping up almost every week. We do a podcast. Jackie Leonard pops up, and Jackie Leonard is one of those venues where it is extremely popular. There's a lot of fish that comes out there. There's a lot of elites that goes on there. I think are they open for the public for just is it only for elites and stuff like that?
Yeah.
And that's
only for organized angling.
And that's due to people not respecting the grounds, or
I think it's just it's always been like that. The competitive guys, I think it was Gauteng that organized the water originally and got them to open it up for us. And since then, all clubs can go there, but he does not allow anybody to just come in. And also, if he say, sorry, the farm is closed this weekend because of rain or whatever, then it's closed, and he doesn't allow you to come in. Then even if it's on a Friday night, he will stop the competition for tomorrow, and that's it. Which is good. He's looking after his own property, and I think it's perfect the way he's doing it.
Yeah, I remember quite a few comps that was cancelled at the last minute when it was like when he said the road is just wet, so no.
No, if it rains on a Friday night, there's no ways you're going to go in on Saturday morning and just go for lekker days fishing. You're going to slip and slide and get stuck, and it's really a problem road, and you've got to respect that.
I fished Jackie Leonard once. Yeah?
A couple of times, but I can remember... I don't know if you ever saw any of these things, Lloyd. The first time that Saki came back to visit us from Vietnam, it's the same trip where he caught those big yellows.
Oh,
he went. The two of us went to Jackie Leonard for Elite, and obviously he sat next to me. And the morning before he started, he came from his peak walking towards me on the edge of the water. And the next moment, this guy jumps and he fucking shouts. And I said, what? No. Then there was a African bullfrog, but it's this big. It's this big. And he jumped as if it wants to attack Saki.
My leg.
And I must actually check, Saki. I've got photos of it on my cell phone still.
I'm gonna go. So I'm literally going through Facebook now to see if I can quickly show Lloyd.
Jeez. Jackie Leonard.
At Jackie. It's the first on my life, and the first and only time in my life I saw one.
Yes.
Saki caught a yellow this big, and he chucked it to the frog, and immediately he tagged it. But the first time he did that, he took it from the tail side, and he started swallowing this thing up until the point where the dorsal fin got here to his mouth, and he couldn't swallow it further. Then he spit it out, but as he spit it out, there was no scales left on it.
Gee.
So he left it there. We took it and we threw it for him again with the head side, but he didn't do anything. And then later in the afternoon, Saki caught another yellow, and he threw that to him, and immediately he was onto it, and he had it head first. And it was a matter of, I'd say, a minute. And he swallowed it that only the two little points of the tail stick out. You can't believe it. It is absolutely stunning. And that big frog in that grass that's on the edge of the dam, how he can just disappear. I said to Saki, I'm sure he went for a swim or something. And the next moment you just move and then you see, he goes again. So he is there, but he sits in that grass and you can't see him at all. Giant African bullfrog.
I can't glo dat ek nie nou because we must have posted it on Facebook. I can't think
I'm sure we did.
Because I can see the time that I was here.
I do know that I've got the photos. I'll send it to you, then you can add it in on the podcast.
Maar Lloyd, dit is so para.
So he could swim around Jackie Leonard's without being scared of Barbel.
I'm telling you now. Now the worst part of it is there in Vietnam, you walk there in the market and those same bullfrogs are there. They tie their front feet together and the back feet, and then the Tanny sits there with a whole bowl full of them. And as you walk past, you see how this frog is watching you. Then you buy one or two and they eat them.
The chance.
So,
Yeah.
eh? Yeah.
Yes. I wonder
So
what spice you put with frog.
In Vietnam eet hulle enigiets. If it moves, if it doesn't, like even if it tries to eat you, they'll also eat it. Like they literally, like they eat everything. There's nothing here that's safe.
Seriously.
Nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, that's gonna annoy me now because I can see the time that I was in South Africa, but I can't see, and I know that we must have posted. I've checked on your profile now and on Original Mooty's profile. But,
Okay, but I'll send you the photos.
But, anyway,
But in any case, so Jackie Leonard.
Let's quickly. So what did we do with the episodes? Did we quickly just show the listeners back home where Jackie Leonard is for those who don't know? Okay, so we always start off with the venue, like the dam. This everybody knows it's Waldam. So let's go to the Nysel. So you saw past the Nysel. Gaan ons of by die informele nedersetting verby. En hy ons hierso en dan
Follow the road to Oranjewil.
Ja. Oranjewil, daai is die afdraai Oranjewil se kant toe, so is net voor dit.
Just before it turns into a dirt road.
Ja.
Mm.
So hierdie paadjie wat hier afgaan, dan is hierdie nou hierdie stukkie grond. So daar kan jy sien daar begin die draad, dan sy draad aan een kant and then
But that far left-hand side, or on top of the screen, that's the area that they very seldom fish because of all the rocks and stuff in the water.
But as you can see, like this straight, this is where you guys usually fish,
Yeah.
Yeah, that point's good always, where your cursor is. That's okay, especially if it's not pegged on the other side. I mean, that's an awesome spot.
Oh, so you guys do peg on this side as well as from time to time?
No, yeah. Sometimes, like with the elites, I peg the masters up there, depending. Like if it's a small group, and then they'd start the seniors on that point, and then work down.
Yeah.
Sometimes they actually also use a bit of kies if it's too full, and then you get like maybe 3 or 4 pegs on that bottom bench. Yeah, there.
Oh, so you can you go through from the one to the other?
Yeah, you got to go through. There's a gate there. You come in on kies.
So you can't go.
You come in on kies.
Oh, so is this road on kies?
Yes.
And then you go through this gate here somewhere.
That's right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I've actually, I think it was the first year I made B-side was Central Gauteng. We fished our essays there. And myself and James, we were on a peg together. Kali Jacobs was actually our captain that year. And that year, I think, I'm sure De Wet was in the side. It was like such a good side. We won basically the All Transvaals, the Free State Games, the essays. I must actually go and find, Martin van Gastel, Reino van Gastel, they were together with us in that side that year. It was like...
That's a mean team.
Yeah, it was such a cool side to be in.
And so then on top of that, you still put you in there.
Yeah, that was... I think that was my second essay. It was so lucky to fish with those oaks.
Was the essays at Jackie?
Yeah, fish the essays at Jackie. And then,
how much? What do you think is the total distance? I'm quickly doing the total distance thing, but with that little comickey included.
Yes, it's a good question, eh? We
That's
definitely
not a very big venue, Saki.
Yeah, we used part of Kies definitely throughout. So I think we had 2 zones in Kies and 4 zones in Jackie.
So you can either see also it's 1.8 kilometers.
Yeah.
Van Hierso om deur tot daarso.
And
Yeah,
then
and they
the
definitely would
main
have
thing
left
is
that way out.
with that bend, you got to leave it out or peg it
Yeah.
extremely far.
Yeah, they
I
would
know
have left
normally
that out.
the left hand side of the bend, they will still maybe peg up to there, just to the right. That last pin, that last point you got. They will peg that area still, but then the bay itself you got to leave out.
Mm.
I mean, that's not a big piece of water for you guys
No.
to do a whole essays there. That's
But like you
And
say,
we went
they
into
went into
Kiers.
Kiers.
So we definitely went down, and then there was, I think we had 2 zones in Kiers and then 4 zones in Jackie. So that was, and then the minis were there as well.
Talk to me about the whole Jackie story. What would you say? Distances, fish, baits.
Yeah, so Jackie is
plans.
definitely, it's got options, you know. So in summer, you're going to have to try and go for numbers, like peak summer, you know, when the muddies are there. And then distance could be anything from 40 meters. I don't like to fish that close there. I'd fish like a 50 and a 60 for the muddies. That's, I mean, you, like I say, you could go closer, but that's for me, that's the best. If that 60 is a bit slow, I'd put both on 50. It's a venue where you can fish both rods on the same distance and it doesn't slow it down or, you know. But generally, if I would go there without having fished it or without any info, I would always start one on like that 50 or 60, just the one, and the other one I'd go with the 10 pound, maybe it's a 115 now, and that would be the starting distance. You get nice carp on that longer rod, and then, I mean, I've had days there in summer where those muddies don't come on, you know, so you need to have that option. And if you, that was one thing that Eric Gerritsen still told me to try, where you catch a carp on that long rod, and then before you rebait and all that, you just throw another ball on that spot, and then you cast again. So instead of feeding, you sort of feeding, but you're not just throwing balls, you know. And then by 1 o'clock, the tempo on that distance, so then it used to be a 125. Maybe now you'd have to throw a heavier weight to get to the 10 pound, but I'd say even like a 115 would be fine. By the afternoon, you're catching those 2 to 3 kilo carps, and if you work in that spot properly, the barb will also come in. And then now you could land them. Back then, I mean, you're fishing with 10 pound. It was a bit of a risk. If you do try to land it, you're going to work for about 40 minutes, and then it's still a bit of luck if you land that barbel. Now you can bully them in a bit at least. But
you could always have used heavier line.
You could have. Yeah, no, I used to only fish 5 pound line.
That's the thing is, like, even though Dad said you could use thicker line, but nobody ever did.
Yeah, all my spools were 5 pound. I think I must have had about 20 spools in my box on either 120 or 130. That was their clips. So I didn't have thicker line that I would have even thought to try out there, because you're catching carp and it's just by luck that barbel comes. You know, it's not that you're trying to get him. If you're throwing for it, yeah, absolutely, you must gear up for it. But I can tell you 80% of my time there at Jackie Leonard's, I'll pick up a big barbel. Just by, you know.
But then you should 80% of the time fish with heavy line.
Yeah. But
if you're so confident you're going to pick up that big barbel, then you must know you must be prepared for him.
No, you're right. It's a good point. But yeah, that's the thing.
Somewhere in between.
Dad?
So what do Barry?
I say, or you must find something in between. let's say maybe a 8 or 9 pound or something like that.
Yeah, even a 7 pound. Yeah.
Yeah.
That just quickly this weekend, that ball of Gideon, where was
16 at Poortjie.
Where is Poortjie?
Poortjie is as you go
Close
across
to
the
the
river.
Across the river.
Is it? Oh yeah, you're right. Sorry, no, Lloyd is right. You take the Targa Road.
Mm-hmm.
You
It's
take
the
the
first
from
road.
the tar road. You turn off towards the Targa, and then before you get that first dirt road that turns left, that you go onto again towards Targa. Before that, you turn into the left. So it's basically opposite Riviera.
Oh, okay.
If you are on the tar road and you go past the Targo off ramp or turn off, you go past it and you stand here on top at the road. Let me just see where you are now.
This was Riviera.
Further up, so it's before you get to Riviera.
There, that section there, Saki. Or I think it might even be there, that area. Where's the turn off to go into Targa? The dirt road, yeah, there it goes. That's the road. You go in there, go down, and then somewhere there.
I think
If
it's
you go
that
in,
bay that we're looking at.
that's right.
Yeah.
If I'm right, that's the bay there.
As well, I was like a barber. And the thing is, like, a lot of the people, I know that's a question that's going to pop up now quite a lot. And because Lloyd is talking about that now, I think it's something that we can definitely discuss. Is when to stop even thinking about going for barbel. Is it already too cold for barbel? Yes or no? No, definitely not. Gideon showed that there's definitely still barbel around.
Gideon, I can just quickly say, Gideon, if I remember correctly, he had 11 fish on Saturday.
30 kilos.
And yeah, but the 11 fish consisted of 2 carp and 9 barbel.
Sure.
So the barbel are definitely still biting, but it seems to me as if they are on those extreme distances again. They're not here in the shallows anymore. They moved out, but if you can get there, they were definitely getting them there in the region of 160.
Sure.
So
That's fine.
they out of my reach. So I'll catch buddies on the side.
They're out of your reach for now, Barry. You're going to start practicing.
The 160, I promise you, the only way that I will make that nowadays is with a bait boat.
Okay, well, remember, he was not using a distance.
Yeah, no, I
Barbecue.
agree.
It
But
was more
still,
close to the-
160 with flying ants is far.
Yeah.
With 10-pound line. 160 is a above average cast.
Ja, dis Lloyd, have you ever seen Gideon gooi?
Yeah. No, I sat next to him a few times, brother. I can blitz
Yeah,
him.
it's so effortless, and it's like
That's what I was
if
going to
you-
say. It doesn't look like he's trying, but geez.
If you look at it, it's like this. It's just like you stand there and it's like.
Yeah.
Wach. Yes, no, it's
No,
something
he's brilliant.
something to see.
There's
Okay, so-
also
Mhm.
another act that casts for is also his old Setia Kukumun. That acts the same sort of effortless action, you know. It doesn't look like he's really casting, but flip that act also. He can also chuck it. He also
Yeah.
likes ants, so maybe
Ja.
Ek kom ons gaan terug na die muddies toe. Ask vir jou, Lloyd, bait for the muddies. Let's because at the end of the day, I know
Yeah.
Jackie Leonard does a muddy video. If I think of Jackie Leonard, yes, you said like you have the opportunity of catching those big barbels. you have the opportunity
Yeah.
of getting the carpet back. But at the end of the day, is the days that everybody enjoy Jackie Leonard is the days where the muddies are biting and on the bite. What do you do? What's something that you would say work for you there?
So maggots was definitely a big thing there. That became like a must-have at a stage. I haven't been there in probably over a year now, so I'm not sure if it's still the case. But for muddies, maggots was a absolute definite. I mean, it was mostly maggots fished with that stinkfoot sort of, that
Stinkfoot.
cheese.
Like, gee,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, so it was really, it seemed to be the one bait that the yellows wouldn't take, actually. I mean, if you fish with does and floats that close distance, you would catch yellows. But if you put the maggots on, you were catching muddies. And they were almost conditioned for it, you know. I mean, they fished a lot of feeder there. So those oaks love maggots as well. So I think it could have been the reason why it became a big bait. And for the temper as well. I mean, you're putting 5 maggots on the hook. Only 2 will come off. So you can leave the bait as is, gooi it again. And that was for high temper, you know, that the younger brother of Baron, Davy, I think he's the younger one.
David, yeah.
Yeah, that act perfected it. I mean, I sat next to him a few times at Elite, and those maggots were covered in that stuff and cheap as that oak was. He was catching muddies and other oaks were just watching. So
that is definitely a good venue for him. He's I think well known for being an absolute
Jackie.
monster for Jackie.
yeah, but then in the same sense, I mean, I've been there where I didn't have maggots, and it was some lady, and she was blitzing us with those maggots, and then I just put on a plain white float on each hook, and that's all I had, like that I could get close to a maggot, and eventually those muddies started taking it as well, and I think I did pretty well for the day. So yeah, I mean, ideally if you've got them, it's going to help, but you can still compete, you know.
Yeah.
Tell
me, and
I want to ask you a little bit, because I mean you've also fished Jackie quite a lot. What is something
Sorry.
that you've?
Sorry, I lost you now for a moment.
Come on my nowhere.
We want your secrets, yeah, Benny.
Yeah, that you also fish Jackie quite a lot. What's something that you would say that stands out for you?
Well, the maggot thing is not for me.
That's exactly why I'm asking you, because I know that you are not a maggot fan.
I personally prefer to use my 2 wide doughs, my Sprite doughs, not a flavor dough. It's just made with Sprite and flour. I use that, but I make them extremely soft and sloppy, so it sticks on my finger, and you just do that. You don't put it on with 2 fingers. 1 finger is what you need. And then I put on the bomb Waldheim Extreme. That's, for me personally, I'd say my best mooty thing for Jackie Leonard. And definitely I must have caught the majority of muddies that I've ever caught at Jackie with Waldheim Extreme. There's a time, I'd say 2, 3, 4 tournaments where we actually used a lot of honey glow. Plain straightforward honey glow, just that honey glow on the bomb, that light yellowish color with a dose or with a half a floaty. And that was working, but it worked for, I'd say, 3, 4 times that I were there. And then it went off, and I haven't even tried it after that again. Maybe it's something just to try again. And then the other thing that I can definitely say that was working at the stage was the luti and with a drop of aniseed oil, especially more in the winter months. You will put a lot of luti on the bomb, and then literally just a drop of that proper aniseed oil that you buy at the chemist. Just a drop there where the line goes in, put that on top, and then you use those aniseed floaties. So I'm not a maggot guy, like I say, and so that doesn't work for me. There were one specific tournament that we fished there, where we had half a container of maggots left from the previous weekend, and we were too late to go and get, and then everybody was sold out. So eventually I said, well, on the way to the dam in the morning, I said to Leah, she can have it. You take the maggots, don't give it to me. I'm old enough and good enough to sort myself out. And I'll never forget it that I was about on the 4th or the 5th peg from the right-hand side, and Leah was to my left, and then it was Michelle Padiazzi. And yes, like Leah and Michelle, but stuffed me up with those maggots. And I said, no, I'm sure it's just that there's muddies in front of them, and it's not the maggots. So, yeah, I'd said about 1 o'clock, I went to Leah. I said, just give me a couple. I just want to see what's going to happen if I put it on. And I put it on, and I don't think it was at the bottom of the dam, and the first muddy was on. I said, stuff that. I'm so far behind in any case by then that there's no point for me to take Leah's maggots and use it to finish second last, settle for your last place and carry on. So yeah, that day definitely it worked, and I couldn't figure out anything. I caught a couple of lacquer carp on the inside, but I mean the numbers were just against me. You couldn't do anything with it.
But that's a lucky example to just bring back the whole thing where everybody always says, yeah, but fishing is luck.
It's not.
The fishing is it's just luck. It's just luck. It boils down to there's an element of luck. I don't think there's any angler that will ever argue against the fact that, yes, you need to be lucky. But that comes back to the thing that Tani Erika said to us. Like, the more you practice, or the better, what's it like that? The more you practice, the
luckier you get. That's a Gary Player saying.
Nee, that's Tani Erika.
Gary Player is known for that, definitely more than Tani Erika. But Gary is saying, the more you practice, the luckier you get.
Yeah. Say, you are good. If you are good, you are good. If you're good, lucky, you are better.
You better.
That is what I said.
Yeah.
If
you're good, you're good. But if you're lucky, you're better.
And I think that describes what I feel about luck. But yeah, you can see, like, I know that Michelle Padiazzi can fish. I know Mom can fish. But at the end of the day, they were using the right thing. They were doing the right technique. And there they would beat you day in, day out. And it's not luck. It's just pure, that's skill. It's something that they did right.
Yeah. They were prepared and I wasn't. And unfortunately, I still say that is a lot of people, for instance, like let's say the situation with Gideon of the weekend. They will say, yes, he was lucky to catch a 16-kilo barbel. That's not luck. That's not luck. If he didn't have the ability to cast on 160 or whatever, he would not have caught it. So he's not lucky. He's not lucky that he caught that. He went for it and he got it.
So there's quite a few good fish that's coming out now. So
Johan Greiling that's fishing for regional mooties. In the same tournament, but in one of the other zones, he caught a gracie of 10.62.
Sure.
Which was also a phenomenal fish. Although I could see on the photo that the fish were really in a bad state. Bad condition, yeah. His tail is... But there's nothing much a person can do about it. It is what it is. You caught him and... luckily you fed him.
I think with the dam level that it is now, I think there's quite a lot of fish that probably gets, like, they want to go into the flats eating the
I think that thing was in the net for a long time, and somebody then afterwards let it out. That's the impression that I got.
Yeah, some fish that get washed in also with the rain, like in the rivers. If they go through reeds and stuff, they also get hurt up quite a bit.
Yeah.
What's the dam levels look like now, Dad?
Hey?
What's the dam levels
110.
Oh, so it's slowly coming back now.
Yeah, not nearly normal, but yeah, it's on 110.
Lloyd, I've got one more question for you that I think we can quickly discuss. So we talked about Jackie being a venue where tempo fishing is something that you expect to have to go there. What would you do if you get to 11 o'clock? You've been catching quite a few, and then all of a sudden it's just gone. What's your plan B?
So I'm fishing on short distance.
Yeah, your short distance one. Would you
Both
just
rods.
go? No, you've got.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say you've got your
A
one
15 or
that-
60.
Okay, 15 or 60.
50 and a 60, and then they both
And now
go deep.
now it's gone.
So then I'd have my longer rod set up. So I'll chuck that one, and then so I'll take the 60 out first, and I'll chuck the longer rod. And what you're saying now, Barry, about the honey glow, honey float's always been a good thing there. So just to add to that, that was definitely one of the better baits, hook baits there. So I would chuck 110 to 120. It depends on the wind and all of that. And then the other rod, I would, if the wind has gone calm now, maybe it's quietened down, I would take that ball and I'd just spray it full of Devil's Track and then a little bit of Chop Chop or some nice pineapple, and then I'll chuck it back there. And if nothing
same
happens,
spot.
So
on the same spot.
See, that's a secret. That's the juice that I want. That's the thing where now you're telling me about the Devil's Rack and the Chop Chop. So now that tells me that I'm pretty sure if you go to any venue, there is probably something in your arsenal where, regardless of what venue you fish, that is something that you have in the back of your mind that you do have a little bit of confidence in. That if you are struggling, that's something that you would do. Is a little bit of Devil's Rack and a little bit of Chop Chop of that.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah,
Is that
that
true?
would
Is
be
that something that
I'd
you will do
definitely-
at any venue?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
So
Saki.
that-
Okay, now carry on.
No,
Saki-
and then, I mean, go for it, Mbe.
Okay. Lately, I can definitely tell you that a year ago, for instance, or a year and a half ago, you would definitely not have found any pineapple in my box, not even tap or anything. I never had it in my box. And that is something that came through lately that that you need to have. And definitely to add to whatever combination you are using. If the fish are getting slower in the afternoon, the guys are starting to put tap or pineapple or something to that effect added to the combination. And that's where we, for instance, started with that pine spice that we got on the market now. It's plain straightforward because of that. And it is something that the guys are using with great success in the afternoons at the moment. So definitely Lloyd has got something there that he mentioned now that we haven't spoken about. But it's definitely that anything in that pineapple style of thing is definitely working. I know of some guys that swear by Dusk and Dawn, which is also a pineapple base. And definitely anything of that type of stuff is working in the afternoons if you add it to that lekker bun spice or soup two or bun spice supreme or parabay or whatever you want.
Fishing, you just add a little bit of it.
Definitely. That definitely makes things a little bit faster at the moment.
Well, we need to know that we are definitely changing seasons now. Like it is definitely going slowly but surely going into winter. So I don't know. You said the mornings are getting colder. Mom's not going walking in the mornings anymore. So I mean, at the end of the day, it's like that. That is, it's a shift in the seasons, and with shift, you need to adapt. So there's going to be things that have to change now from 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, because we know as soon as that switch happens, like it happens quite rapidly.
I can quickly tell the people that I haven't seen it personally, but I heard over the radio this afternoon that there's somebody apparently that made some claims on Facebook and everywhere that the winter this year is going to be severely cold, and a whole story that the guy apparently had on Facebook and on various social media platforms. And then I heard this conversation over the radio this afternoon where they spoke to one of the professors from a varsity that said that's absolutely fake news. There's various statements in the guy's article that he so-called published that where his absolute facts, his plain straight facts of life. The distance that the earth is from the sun, all that type of stuff, those physical facts that is hard and fast is completely wrong. And this guy said then that afterwards I asked him, what do they predict for a long-term weather forecast for the winter? Is it going to be severe cold or not, or moderate, or wow? And he said, no, it will be, according to their modules, it will definitely a above average warm winter.
I see now on News 24 that they say, what the Philian phenomenon, Weather SA Weather Service debunks colder than ever hoax message.
Yeah.
Well, that's good news for fishing.
Yeah. So he said, no, it will be a above average warm winter.
Okay.
So I think we can look forward to that, and that we can fish for quite a while.
I would say that I do hope that when we are there in June that it's not too cold, because I think my body's adapted to the warm weather, quite conditioned to that now. So I think when I get there, I'm gonna my tanden gaan klap. Lloyd, the first time I came back home, not the first time, when I took my wife to South Africa now for the first time, the week leading up to us flying, the weather was absolutely beautiful in South Africa. My dad had short sleeves, and wearing shorts and everything like that. And on this side, I said to my dad, okay, guys, we need to pack. So what's the weather like? My dad's like, yeah, it's lekker warm. Don't worry. Hey, we pack full bags, summer clothes. So I've got shorts, I've got t-shirts.
But you haven't got winter clothes there.
I do have a couple of jackets and stuff like that, but I didn't pack anything like that in. But my wife, she put in little sundresses and, completely summer clothes. I think she had one jacket in her bag. There. We got on the plane, everything. We got on the plane. When we landed in OR Tambo, it was like 5 or 6 degrees Celsius. I got out of the plane with like a long sleeve shirt and jeans. My wife is standing there. She doesn't have a jacket. She's got like a little top on, and we're standing there like freezing us to death.
But luckily we knew, and Leah said she knows what's happening here, so let's take jackets with.
So as we got out of the terminal, my parents were waiting for us outside, and they were like just holding the jackets open and be like, come, with jackets. My wife, before she even says hello to my mom, whatever, she's like jumping into that jacket. She's like, woof.
Sure, that's
So
cool.
hopefully that will not be the same this year.
No, I hope it's not so cold, Marbury. Well, just pack a jacket in case.
Yeah,
and now we're going to go up to Henties Bay. Now, you know what it can be there with that fog and everything in the mornings or in the afternoons. So it's normally a bit of especially against the coast there in Namibia, it should be fairly cold.
Sure.
Also my DK will be prepared. I think I don't mind taking a break from the heat for a month or so. I mean, the temperatures here have been touching the 40s now for the last couple of weeks, so it's just time to.
And the problem there, Lloyd, is it doesn't cool off at night.
So it stays hot.
It's as if it stays exactly the same day and night.
The humidity or what? How does it just...
Why is this thing not typing now? Sorry.
But in any case, Lloyd, tell me, and what do you do if the yellows are a problem?
In general or a Jackie?
A Jackie.
I'd go a bit deeper, Barry. I mean, if I fished with those maggots and the yellow starts taking the maggots, then I'll go deeper. But like, instead of a 50, I wouldn't even try a 60. I'll go to a 70. I mean, I
Okay,
think
you'll
10
do a big
meters
jump.
isn't. Yeah,
You'll
I
do a
think
big
10
jump.
meters isn't enough. Because, yes, see, I can't stand catching those things. I'd rather wait an extra 10 minutes and catch a muddy or a carp and then start working it, than go to 60, catch 2 muddies and then yellows again. So I'd rather leave like a bit of a gap so I'm not moving them with me,
Start
So
fresh.
leave them there and then just go further.
Can I quickly share with the people what I do there, Saki? Especially, I don't know why, but I've never had the effect that it's working so well as what it normally works for me at Jackie. Is where I will, if I see the yellows start biting, I will take a bomb. I'll, like you said, before you cast, you first put a bomb in, and then you put your bait in. So what I would do is that bomb I will shake in SA powder or in clean fluorescein powder. Really, a lot of fluoro on it, and then when I'm ready to cast that, I will stand 3 meters behind my box, and you cast it, and you let it go down, strike it, bring in, put your normal trace on, stand at your box, and you cast it. So you fish 3 meters behind that fluorescein bomb. And then when you got the one that with your actual bait on, you make sure that you got no color on it. So you pull all those yellows to a spot 3 meters in front of where you're supposed to fish. The trace that you got your actual bait on, make the millibomb a lot firmer than the one that's in front. So that you don't want to leave all the bait and stuff there, but you want the fish to know if every now and then, boom, here's one, and you tend to get the muddies there. And after you don't have to, after absolutely every fish, but every, let's say 15 minutes, put that big bomb with the fluorescein there. And you keep the yellows just at 3 meters in front of it. So that's something that you can definitely try. Or sometimes it happens that if I'm, for instance, fishing on 65 and the yellows are getting there, then I'll keep the yellows there, keep that bomb there. But every time when I put my bait on, I'll stand 3 meters behind it and fish 3 meters in front of it. Because like Werner Libber that said to us in the podcast that normally the muddies tend to move in closer in the afternoon. So I will keep that spot with the yellows. I'll keep them there and then just move closer and catch the muddies in front of it. So that's just something that I can say that people can try.
Is there anything you do else with your feed for the muddies? Last week we spoke to him, Johan Beekers, and he was telling us about his muddy feed. Do you have a different feed for the muddies, or do you fish your normal feed for them?
No, I don't have a specific feed, but I'll fish a specific trace. I'll always fish a spring for muddies, and then I'll always put the spring with the feed in the water in my bucket and squeeze it so it's almost like milky, So it is a bit softer, definitely, when I'm fishing for muddies. In the beginning, I'll try and, if my feed is dry, I'll try to leave it a little bit, not so tight, sparsely squeezed onto that spring so it can break up lacquer in the beginning. And then I'll start putting it in the bucket and just wet that feed every time. That was something I learned, Jesse Umberry. I'm not sure if maybe you taught me that years ago. But someone, I think it was maybe at one of your clinics. But that's definitely something that I like to do for the muddies. But that's it. If the tempo is really quick, I don't even bother. Then I just try and make sure I cast it accurate. Keep the tempo, but still keep it accurate. But no, nothing special with the feed.
Lloyd, if you say accurate, what would you say? Left, right, what distance?
What's the acceptable
radius?
Well, I mean, you don't want to go a meter left or right. So if you've got a 2 meter sort of gap, that's as big as I would feel comfortable. If it misses more, so a meter left or a meter right, then that's a cut cast. Then you need to, depending as well, if it's windy or not. If it's windy, okay, it can happen because those fish are also swimming a little bit more loosely. If it's calm, I think you should be able to cast it within that 2 meter sort of area.
And that's on what distance?
That would be the 50 and 60. Should be fairly easy enough to hit that. On a 70.
You do the 115?
No, the 115, I'm a bit more.
I thought that 2 meter. I thought that 1 meter radius at 1 meter every side. I thought that's going to be your 115 or 135 or something, and then nearby you would say 30 centimeters.
Yeah, the 115. It's a bit closer. No, 115, I'd say it's maybe instead of 2 meters, I'd say it's like a 4 or 5 meter radius. If you
radius or diameter,
yes,
from the one side to the other side, 5 meters.
Yeah. That's fine. But that if it's a radius and it's 10 meters. But okay, I understand.
So circle that's only 5 meters wide.
Yeah.
That would still be good enough. Also, depending on the tempo, if it's an hour long, cheapest 5 meters is fine.
No,
it's not going to speed it up to 15 minutes because you casted it exactly on that previous spot. I mean, that's where I would say the line is a little bit more important.
Okay, so there's going to be a technical difficulty. I can see definitely not recording. Lloyd clicked on the button or something on that side, and he stopped the recording. But I think we basically at around the time that we usually stop. So I just want to say, in his absence, to Lloyd, thank you for all the. I can see him, but I know you guys can't see him. So Lloyd, thank you for all the information that you shared with us tonight. It's always lucky to talk to you. Dad en dan podcast, dankie vir die moeite daai kant. Next week we will be back for, I think we've got 2 more episodes, normal episodes, and then it's the chaos that's going to start.
Yeah, then we'll see what will happen here. Looking forward to it and can't wait to have you here. In the meantime, I'm going to practice my casting. And I was thinking of it this afternoon that more than likely I've got to start taking out my surf sticks and my SL50s and just make sure that I get them ready. We're not on the coffee grinders yet for the surf. I know you and me both are still old school. We prefer the SL50. So I'm sure we will take a couple of casts, and I can see there's a couple of challenges coming between the two of us, like normal, who's getting it the furthest. So we'll see what will happen there. I can do anything.
Anyways, alright. As jy geluister het tot tyd, wil ek vir julle dankie sê. Dan soos julle volgende week, same time, same place. Onthou as julle wil gaan kyk vir daai kompetisie, gaan kyk op Facebook. So veilige kans sal ek daai kompetisie daar so uitsit. Dis ek julle volgende week. Cheers.